Shall we get started?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll get started. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to start by introducing myself. I am Coraline, and I'm the Global Head of Technology at Modulus. And I'm joined by John. Hi, John, our Digital
Everyone.
Product Manager. And before we dive in the demonstration and what you are all here for, I'm just going to start by answering a few basic but fundamental questions to introduce TESSA to you all and what it does. So first of all, what is TESSA? So TESSA produces feasibility studies on any given plot of land in the UK in minutes. Doing so, it drastically speeds up the process from the initial assessment of your land or lands to the pre-planning stage by providing certainty on what can be built and how much it will cost. But who can benefit from that? Well, developers, first and foremost, whether it's private or public sectors, and architects. Essentially, it is addressed and will be useful to anyone involved in the early design stages of property development projects. Now you might ask, what is our competitive advantage? Or in other words, why are we different to any other generative design software on the market? Well, the scheme that TESSA generates in real time, or what we call design options, they're based on the kit of parts that we developed. And the Modulus kit of parts is a proven and accredited build system, which means that TESSA doesn't simply generate massing diagram, it generates fully resolved solutions that are technically feasible, that meet UK building regulation, that are carbon quantified, and accurately costed. So what are you getting out of TESSA? Because we automated all of your speculative and repetitive work for you, what you're getting out of TESSA are more viable options that have been optimized for your site in a fraction of the time, accurate cost and carbon metrics from the live data that we feed into TESSA, and last but not least, the ability to export your work for further refinement into your current workflow, which means that none of your work is lost. Last question, what is next for TESSA? So as I mentioned, the version of TESSA we are going to present to you today is a feasibility tool, but the goal is to extend the functionality beyond that feasibility stage into planning and construction to provide an end-to-end process. So I'm going to stop rambling now and move on to the interesting part and the demonstration. A bit of a disclaimer first, John and I, we are not salespeople, we are not architects. We have experts who work with us and they are in the audience today, so we can call them in to answer your question at the end of the demonstration. But what we are going to do today is just to use a couple of use cases and about 25 minutes of your time to demonstrate TESSA's potential and how easy it is to use. John is going to take over and we'll start with a simple flow to show you the basic principle of TESSA. And then I'm going to follow on with a more complex site. We will then move on to a Q&A. So please use the Q&A section in Zoom to submit your question throughout the demonstration, and we will answer as many as possible at the end of the demonstration. John, over to you. I can see you already sharing your screen.
Excellent. Thanks, Kay. Thanks for the introduction there. And yeah, we actually just had a question in the Q&A already. Will the recording be provided? Yes, we'll be sending around a recording for anyone who couldn't attend or wants to rewatch it. Excellent. So thanks for joining. I'm going to start off with a simple site, and what I'm showing so far is our login screen for TESSA. So this is just to show you that TESSA is fully web-based. There's nothing that you need to install on your computer, and it doesn't even need a kind of particularly powerful computer to be able to run. I've now logged in and I am greeted with my project directory. So these are all of the existing projects that I've worked on. So if you're using TESSA, you'll be able to save your projects and come back to them at any point in time. You can give them a name. You can add little notes against them as well to be able to just explain them a little bit better. And we're going to start off with creating a new project. So I'm going to put my developer hat on and think about a site that I've seen in Southwest London. And I want to show you how quickly we can assess that plot of land to really see whether it's feasible and whether I want to purchase it before that short kind of purchase window runs out. So I've got my map. I can either zoom into where I'm interested, or if I know the address or postcode, I can search for that. I'm then taken to my site, and what I can now do is draw my boundary for which I want TESSA to start generating me some design options. So as I go around and draw the site, immediately TESSA is going to start generating different design options for this site. And if I click this, it's going to now showcase me the first particular option. I can pan around, and what I can see just looking at this quite quickly, TESSA's really trying to fill out the site and just optimize the space. But what I can see is this site has some houses along here. They're set back from the road, so I'll probably want to just set this building back a little bit so that it's just not utilizing all of that space and it's a bit more in keeping. So I can create a step back here, and we'll see that the site's now showing with this orange outline just to show me that setback. While I've been talking, Tess has been very quickly generating different design options that I can see in this table. I can start to click through and just see what they're looking like. I've then got lots of different metrics showing here in the table, and that's just giving me a really quick way to be able to compare and contrast the different design options that Tess is generating for me. We've got around 60 different metrics that you can pull into this table to use for your comparison. And that's something that you can manage yourself, that's custom to you. If I then want to see some more detail about this site and the particular design option that I'm looking at, I can open the inspector on the right-hand side, see some information about the site area, the different zones that I might have. And here I can see a little bit of an explanation of the colors that you can see. So you might have been wondering what the different colors were in this building. These are a breakdown of the different unit types we've got, and these are generated from our kits of parts. So that gives you a kind of colored visual representation of the breakdown. As I look further down, I've got a lot more metrics about this design option and this building. And if I want to go into a lot more detail and see a real breakdown of the design costs or sustainability metrics, I've got all of that information here. So if I take the cost plan, the cost metrics, for example, I can show you the level of detail that we're showing here. And this is all following the standard RICS format and the new rules of measurement. And because we know all of the components in our kits of part, we've got all of the supply chain costings to calculate all of these costs here for you. So I've got my abstract view here with my colors. If I want to look at more of an architectural view of the building, I can switch how that view looks. And what I can do is I can start to peel away the different layers of the building to just give you an idea of the level of detail. So as I start to peel away the facade, the walls, the roof, etc., I can then get right down to the structure of the building. So we can see all of the steel here and the cores that are making up the building as well. So far I've looked at the way I can draw the site and see the different design options that get generated. I've looked at these all in 3D, but if I want to see more of a 2D floor plan view, I can switch to this view. That's going to give me more of a breakdown of the modules in the units in the building, as well as all of the service spaces, etc. And just to point out, these are all adherent to UK building regulations. So for example, fire distances, 2 cores is standard, etc. And I can go through the different floors I've got in my building. And if I had multiple buildings on maybe a large site, and I just wanted to look at a particular building, I can switch to that building. Switching back to 3D, I then want to just see what TESSA provides me if I really just maximize the space on this site and remove that offset that I put at the beginning. So I'm just going to remove that now. And then within seconds, TESSA is going to regenerate different design options to just try and fill that space out. So I've got my options that start generating here. And one thing I was making note of is one of the metrics I brought in was the number of north-facing units. And if I look at the different design options that I've got here, and I look at this sort of the way that they've been laid out, I can see that the number of north-facing units in some of the different design options, some are 48, for example, but this one in particular has got 0. So this one probably is quite a good use of the site. We've got the buildings laid out in parallel, so it's quite nicely set out. So TESSA's obviously gone and generated these different design options for me. It's done that in seconds. I've then adjusted my site to remove that offset. Again, all of these options have then been generated in seconds with all of the metrics that I was showing you, again, being generated as I go through and iterate. But so far, this has all just been within TESSA, and there might be some things that I want to start doing downstream from here, looking at different costs and assessments, as well as possibly going and kind of editing and iterating these design options a little bit more. So we do then have the option to actually export this information from TESSA. And I've got the option to export those 2D drawings, the metrics that I talked about, but then also export these into Revit. So here I've got my option to export that, and this does use the Autodesk Forge integration that we've used. So it does take a few minutes to generate depending on the size of the building. So I can hit my save and export. I'll get an email once that's been generated and my files are ready to download. But in the essence of time, I've kind of pre-prepared the download here, and I've got my Revit window open. I should start off by just saying that I'm not a Revit expert, so apologies if I use any wrong terminology or don't go into much detail. We do have our Revit expert on the call, just in case there's any particular questions around Revit. So I can start off here with my site plan. That's got my 2 different buildings. And what I can then do is I've already opened my sheet for one of the levels. The integration has automatically generated my sheet view here. And it's gone and it's pre-populated a lot of the information that would need to be populated. I've got my apartment type keys, so that corresponds to those different colors that we were seeing in the building. I've got my scale, my paper size, etc., all trying to make this as easy as possible to then be able to, print these out or share them. But obviously, you can also transfer your project standards onto here for your design system, etc. I'll then switch to the building file, which is one of the buildings on that site. Again, I've got my 3D here. I can then switch to my floor plan layout, and I can see here the integration is automatically adjusted the orientation as well as the scale to just make best use of that page. I can then look at things like my schedules. So for example, I've got my door schedule. All of this information is being automatically created. And then finally, I've got my area schedule as well. Something that you'd normally need to draw, that's all been automatically generated. I think that the final thing to note on the Revit piece is that the files for the units that are making up the layouts have all been downloaded as well. So if you do need to go and make a slight adjustment, you can just make that on one of the files, and then that gets propagated to what's been generated. So what I've tried to show you here is just how quickly I can assess the feasibility of a site and help make a decision. But I'm going to hand over to Ko, who's going to walk you through a little bit more of the editing type functionality that we've got within TESSA to kind of address more of the kind of architectural design elements that you might be considering. Over to you, Ko.
Thank you very much, John. That was very helpful. So what you're seeing now on the screen is the same project directory as John presented at the very beginning of his section. So as John said, he showed you how to obtain results quickly. That was the goal. And you can really start to think about repeating the same process for 5, 6, 7 or more of your lands, and how you can quickly assess their viability at a high level before deciding which one are worth investing a little bit more time on and iterate and bring on all of the complexity of your site. So that very much, John's section really much spoke to the land assessment use case. What I'm going to focus on now is a more complex site with multiple zones, and I'm going to show you how to create different scenario to unlock the full potential of your projects, really. So for the sake of this webinar and to save a little bit of time, I'm going to enter an existing project that have I've done the setup already to save some of the time. So I've seen question around what is a zone. So what you can see on the screen is I've laid out the boundary of my site and I've drawn six different zones. At the moment, they are all shown in red because they are set as exclusion zones. So you can see them listed and referenced in the inspector panel. You can rename them, and that's going to help you reference to them throughout the application and a little bit later as well. But exclusion zones are basically zones where buildings are not going to be generated. We've got multiple use cases in TESSA for them. Here, I've done this so you can follow along the iterative process that I would go through in a normal situation. So that's why I've done that. And I'm going to gradually work through them. All right, so let's have a look at the site. For that, I'm just going to switch to a satellite view to explore the context and the surrounding. Again, I'm not an architect. I have had conversation about this particular site with architects, so I'm just going to repeat what they told me. And apparently the first thing to note on this particular site is the high road here east of the side. And the fact that in the neighboring buildings are very much aligned to this road. So there is a really good street alignment, which is why I created this shape, this street edge zone here that follow the curve of the street. And that is to create buildings that have really nice street clean edges, which planners really like. The other opportunity for this zone is to maximize the number of commercial area and retail on the ground floor because it is looking at the street. So that's also something that I'm going to be interested in. The second very important feature of the site is obviously the park and the access to nature on the other side of the site. So that's why this zone here is called Park Views. And here I think it's a really good candidate to create some form of staggered building where I could have a little bit more height at the back of the zone and less, towards the park to create this kind of maximize the view looking out into the park. So that's another challenge that I'm going to solve here. And the last area of the site that I want to talk about now is the heart, so the center zone. And this is interesting because I have two objectives. So this zone could be used to create connectivity and connection between east and west and between the streets and the nature to kind of flow between the two. So I could leave it as an exclusion zone to create a focal point in the middle of the built area to really provide room for amenities, for playgrounds, for parks and this sort of things that could really help bring a community together. And on the other end, another scenario could also be because the zone is in the middle of your site, it also provides the biggest opportunity for tall building, so increase the number of units there. So that would be another scenario, and I'm going to run the two scenarios in parallel. I'm going to show you how easy it is to do that and to access a different scenario for a big complex site to compare and to decide which one is the most relevant to your specific use cases. So, all right, let's go back to a street view. I'm going to switch back just because it is more contrasty. And here I've turned on the site context. So this zone, I'm going to pop up the table that John presented and switch this zone to a buildable. So now TESSA is starting to generate options, so you can see it actioning live. So as we speak, it generates the option, calculate the metrics, and you can flick through them to understand which one would be interested. So, okay, the objective for the zone are street alignment and maximizing retail area on the ground floor. To do that, I kind of need to change the metrics that I see on the table to bring up, so commercial area, which is the total area that I can allow for commercial spaces and retail. And I'm also going to turn on density because why not? I'm going to move that up because I'm really interested in it. So at the moment, I don't have any podium level, so the commercial area is calculated at 0 for now. So that's why I'm going to change the brief used for this specific zone. Sorry. In John's section, it used default value for that brief, so that was automatically generated based on the default value. Here, I need to change them because I want to include a podium. I think I can get away with this sort of height looking at this building, so that's fine. But if I add a podium, so again, it automatically recalculates the design options to match the brief that I set up, but this is slightly too high, so I'm just going to reduce the number of floor here, and again, TESSA is going to regenerate. I could change the unit mix, but I'm not going to do that for now. I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm going to have a look at my street alignment. I'm just going to turn that off. Here we go. So this is a really nice option. I like it. It does fulfill the street alignment. Let's have a look. This is also nice. Street alignment is good. I have less number of units and less commercial area, so potentially less interesting. This is also nice. Let's have a look. This has also a high number of units, but in terms of street alignment, this is not perfect. So I think all in all, this is probably the best option for now with this particular settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the zone, and that allows me to fix the building layout on this particular zone and then to move on to iterate on another zone. So I don't have to worry about this anymore. That's great. Now I'm going to move on to the park, to the zone that neighbors the park. And as we said, the challenge on this zone was to create different height, staggered building, more height at the back, less height at the front. So that's what we're going to do now. Again, TESSA generates different option. I'm going to, so to do that, to create this staggered building that I've just mentioned, I'm going to use a function called wing height editor. And the wing height editor allow me to customize a design option that has been already generated. So I can go in and change the height of the building, but not change the building alignment that I'm seeing here. And that's very applicable for the use case that we're seeing. Again, I'm going to first select the option with the most unit, which is this one. And it also very fitted because it has a lot of wings. What we call wings are, so like, for example, this building has 3 wings. So they like the different section of the building. And here, as I said, I'm going to select the one at the back here, and I'm going to add a few floors, 9. I think I can get away with 9. And as you can see here, in the first line of your table, all of the metrics automatically adjust and recalculate based on the changes that you implement. So you can imagine how long it would take for you to do something like this manually, to just redraw all of your drawings and then recalculate all of your metrics. Well, you don't have to worry about that at all. In TESSA, we do that for you. So here we go. I think this is pretty good. You can see I changed the orientation. You can see how the building are now staggered. And if I select the zone, total number of units, 414. I think that's about 100 more than what I had before. So I'm quite happy with this results. I'm gonna go ahead and lock it as well. All right, so that was a lot of information. I'm just going to pause for a second and do a little bit of a summary of what I've just showed you. So first zone, street edge. I showed you how you could customize the table here to assess the design option based on your own specificity and your own challenges. And I also showed you how you can lock the design options once you found something suitable for you and then be able to move on. On the park view zone, I've used the wing height editor to show you how you can modify the design at a granular level to maximize the opportunity of your site. And what I have left to do now is to talk about the heart. So to talk about this zone in the middle that could either be a focal point or can either maximize the number of units. So here I'm going to create the first scenario where this is a focal point. So I'm going to leave it as an exclusion zone and then turn on the other two zones that are built around it. So the zone north of the site is the site access. And the zone here, as you can see, I have set up a 18-meter offset because there is a building south of the site. So I don't want my building to be too close to the existing building. So I've created an offset, similar functionality as what John presented. I think it's very fitting here. And then, as you can see, there are a lot of options. So obviously it's going to take a little bit longer than very small sites, but in a matter of a few seconds, you will have options with 120, 140 units fully generated, fully costed with all of the sustainability metrics calculated as well. So again, if you were to do that manually, it would take a while. You can do the same thing as I did. So explore this zone, iterate, lock it, and then explore the other zone. You can very much do the same assessment. Here, I'm just going to, for the sake of speed and the webinar, I'm going to select this one. So a total number of 822 unit and a construction cost around 193 million. 83, sorry, won't count, that's not good. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save this, call it scenario 1. This is just, again, a starting point. The fact that I can save it means that I can refer back to it at a later date. I can also, so it's going to now appear, here you go, it's going to appear in the navigation panel, and I can always iterate on it. I can further develop it. I don't have to stop here. I can really much continue. And as you can see in the navigation panel, I've pre-saved an option for scenario 2. So scenario 2 is where the heart is a built zone, and I've defined 9-story tall building, and I have reduced the area of the other two zones around it to still be able to have enough room for amenities and services. So I'm going to show you in a minute how quickly it is to go from one to the other, but again, it was quicker to do it that way. I have a total number of 982 units, so that's a solid 150, 60 more units than the scenario 1, so that's interesting, but it's also a lot more expensive to build, obviously. So again, both have pros and cons. My point is you can create as many scenarios as you want and as is fitted for your site, and then you can decide which one are worth exploring in more detail. The very last thing that I want to show you, and that's just for the sake of it, how the tool that we made available for you to iterate on the site, it's very easy. If I wanted to convert that into a buildable zone, I could very easily slice it using, the cut tool. So I can slice it here, I can slice it here. So that is what I'm doing now, is to take the scenario 1 and then transform it to obtain scenario 2. But because I've saved scenario 1, I can always go back to it. Nothing is lost. So that's a very good example. And then if I think, I need to have a little bit less or a little bit more, I can very much change the location of the point or create, other points. All of the tools available are very handy. I can also merge, and I can do all sorts of things, which you will be able to discover if you sign up for TESSA. And that is it for my section. I'm just going to go back to what it was and give the floor to John.
Fantastic. Well done, Kay. I think that was a really good overview of some of the tools that are available, kind of thinking more from a design perspective and how a site can be broken down and iterated. So just to sort of recap, so to begin with, I walked you through a very sort of simple site to just show you the speed and just how quickly you can assess a site. As Kay said, imagine you're doing that multiple times to be able to compare. Then we moved on to Ko's portion where she was showing you a little bit more of the editing functionality, kind of having a bit more of a design input there. And as you could see, each time Tessa is really doing the heavy lifting. It's not trying to be an architect, it's trying to help kind of work with you, depending on your sort of background and skill set. And just showcasing that ability to iterate the site, create those different scenarios, save those and come back to them really easily. And each time you're doing that, it's recalculating all of those metrics. So you can just imagine each change you make, how long it would take to recalculate things manually. It's doing that within seconds. I then also showed you the export functionality. And as I mentioned, you get an email while we were on the call. It took a couple of minutes to happen, but I received the email when we were on the call, so I could download those files there. Now we're going to move on to our Q&A portion of the call. So there's been lots of really good questions that have been coming in.
Yeah, a lot of questions. We might not have the time to answer them all, I'm afraid, but let's get started.
Yeah, excellent. And you know, we'll try and follow up with what we can as well if we didn't manage to cover everything.
Absolutely.
So one of the great questions that came in, which I'm sure a lot of you would be wondering, is the cost of TESSA. So prices start at 200 a month, and that depends on the size and type of organization. Thanks, Co. But you can either contact us at hello@tessa.ai, or go to the website, and there's a contact form there where you can get in touch with us, and someone will get back to you.
Thank you very much. So we have another question that is around sustainability, this one. So we might want our expert Monisha on the call. Thank you, John. So the question is, what life cycle stages are covered in the carbon footprint? So a few different questions along the same lines, but that basically what it covers. And that is a great question, especially because when building traditionally, it's a challenge because you don't get any detail from the supply chain and how much CO2 is used in the material, which is something that obviously we have access to because the base system is the modular ski smart, so we have access to more information along that. And I'm going to leave the floor to Manisha to answer that question in more technical detail.
Thanks, Ko. So we currently provide carbon metrics for the product stage, which is also known as A1 to A3. This makes up a part of the life cycle stages, and we are also concentrating on this initially because this is the largest contributor to the embodied carbon of a structure. And we abide by the EN 15978 standard, which includes raw material supply, transport and manufacturing of the products that makes up the multi-family housing. And we're also constantly working to expand the boundaries beyond the product stage. And we are currently focusing on including A4, which is transport to construction site, and A5, which is assembly and installation, to account for construction stage emissions. So,
thank you very much, Manisha.
No problem.
Thanks, Manisha. So we've also had various questions around cost and how we calculate the cost data that we showed you in TESSA. So we'll pass over to Doug, who's our expert in that area, to give you a little bit of an overview. Over to you, Doug.
Thanks, Jonathan. So as we've talked about, our building system, use of our building system within TESSA means we can get really accurate in terms of our module and unit costs. We break down our module costs into over 100 different costing elements. Those elements cover materials, labor, for module construction, as well as fit out, logistics and on-site deployment. all those cost elements are common across all the modules, and each cost element is associated with a different module metric. So if you think about takeoffs that you might do, typically we've got those takeoffs for all the modules. Today we've got about 40 metrics per module. So things like the floor area, the weight of the frame, the number of the doors, does it have a kitchen, does it have a bathroom, etc. We're automating takeoff of those metrics, and as we're actually developing and delivering buildings using that system, we're continuously evolving the cost elements and the metrics that we use. Yeah, that feedback from the real world is really important. So the final stage is obviously within TESSA you get the unit mix. Using that unit mix, we can then automatically roll up the costs to produce the rolled up costs for each building and for the overall project.
Great,
Thank
thanks,
you
Doug. I think Chris, also from our team, had something to add on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I just wanted to add and amplify to what Doug's just stressed there, is that ultimately any cost assessment by TESSA can include or will exclude what the client wants to see as amply demonstrated in terms of the configurability. So what we can do is we can show net costs exclusive of prelims, contingency, overheads, or whatever element they wish to include in it. And that's really the beauty of TESSA, is its configurability and the ability to then run multiple scenarios fast with that degree of certainty throughout all of them to enable you to compare and contrast.
And I guess as I sort of talked about, all of that information can then be exported to do any sort of downstream cost analysis that you know, financial modeling, etc.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at the time, it's already 40 past. So maybe I take one more question and then we wrap up. So a few people ask about how often supply chain costs are updated, especially potentially with inflation rates and variability in the market. So I just wanted to reiterate that we review the rates applied on a monthly basis. And they're based on supply chain information and our own experts to review that the information is still valid and available on the market. So that is propagated into TESSA. We are using the Modulis Kitafart as a base system and base layer to provide this level of accuracy, but TESSA is independent from the Modulis Kitafart, so you can very much use it to conduct feasibility studies independently of the Kitafart. You don't have to purchase everything. We are a provider, and this Kitafart is used for real projects, but they're not coupled. It's just used to provide more accuracy and certainty. Maybe one more question, John. What do you think?
Just looking at the time.
I think I had one question around, does it automatically bring in site boundaries and town planning data? A nice one.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Do you want to answer it?
I'll let you take that one.
Okay, so we are working on land registry data, so that's specific to, so it's UK national, and that is a feature that is going to come extremely quickly, where you'll be able to search for land titles and use land titles and legal boundary to define your site instead of having to draw it manually. You can still do both, but that's something that is coming in a matter of days. So that is the very good news. And for all of the questions around build system, other tenure type and stuff like that, maybe, John, do you want to say that one?
I guess so yes, you know, we want to incorporate a level of versatility and flexibility. So we've obviously shown you multi-story, multi-family buildings there, but there's, you know, obviously other accommodation types to consider. So that's something that we need the TESSA community to really help shape as we kind of develop as we move forwards as well.
Mm-hmm. So that is a very nice segue to our call to action. Looking at the time, if that is your situation, please get in touch. Talk to us. We want to talk to you. So if you like what you saw today, you can either email us at hello@tessa.ai. John is going to write this email address in the chat box right now, so you can copy and paste. You can also use the contact form on a website, whether it's tessa.ai or modulus.com. We will respond to you and get in touch. You absolutely can purchase TESSA right now. As John mentioned, price starts at £200 a month, depending on the size and the type of organization you are in. And we're currently offering a discount, 50% for limited time only. So you know what to do. I am fully aware that we haven't had the time to cover half of the questions. There were a lot of questions. Thank you very much. We will follow up with an email to you all. All people who registered to the webinar, you are all going to receive an email. We're hoping before the end of the week with a recording to the webinar. So if you missed the beginning, you will be able to watch it again, and answers to the most commonly asked questions as well. So we will do it. Don't worry. Thank you very much for joining us. There we go. That's the end of my talking abilities. I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed the 45 minutes that you spent with us. Upon exiting this webinar, there is going to be a survey. If you could fill it in for us, that would be really helpful. But again, it's not compulsory. And then you will be redirected to our website. So hopefully all is clear. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a beautiful afternoon. John?
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Well done. Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.